Hey guys, Mrs. Dukoski here for your chapter 17 Catcher in the Rye video lesson. So I hope that you're enjoying the book so far. Holden just left the museum from chapter 16. I have chapter 16 notes with that link to the Natural History Museum. I hope that you checked it out. There's some really cool things and exhibits there. It may have been a while since you've been to visit, or maybe you've never visited. I highly recommend it. It might be hard to get to now, but they had some cool virtual tours. So I hope that you checked out their site from chapter 16 because that's where Holden was. So now Holden for chapter 17, he's moving on. It's still Sunday and he has that date with Sally Hayes. So he's going on a date. So buckle up, Holden's going on a date. I'm just going to do a screen share so you can look at the notes that we have for chapter 17. They're in your Schoology folder. I have also a little video to help you guys, get motivated to do some learning. So if you've been kind of at a screen all day, need a break, before we hop into a whole chapter of Catcher in the Rye, which is great and I love, but I do think it's important that you've kind of moved around, stretched a little, and you've given yourself those little breaks that I know and you know are so important. So here's my screen share. Again, I hope everybody out there is doing well. If you're wondering where I am, I'm in our Z space. Stop my share for a second. I'm in the school Z space. So maybe you know that room. It's kind of like a computer lab room where you've possibly visited during times to do labs and things like that. There's fun glasses around. Do you guys wear these? There's another pair. Hold on. So this is the Z space. I've actually never done a Z space lab. It's, there's not that much for the English content, but I know that you guys come in here for science classes and other things. So it's cool. You'll be back here soon enough. So with that, we are going to hop into chapter 17, Catcher in the Rye. So have your PDF available or your packet, and we'll find chapter 17. Schedule. My apologies. Here are, these are the chapter 16 notes. These are the chapter 17 notes. So your chapter 17 notes can be found in Schoology. And again, here is your Get Focused First Be Now. It is a nice little 7-minute yoga boost to get your juices flowing, your energy moving, all that oxygen that you need to be good thinkers and good learners. So take a little 7-minute break, get yourself, I did it. So I was at the end of my 7 minutes. I needed a break. We all need breaks. So do your 7-minute yoga boost break and then get yourself back in here. If you need a chapter 16 review, there's a quick review video. And then in this chapter, we focus on the elements. We're back to elements, theme and conflict. So we're going to talk about the themes or focus for this chapter, conformity and rebellion, or conformity versus rebellion. And then we hint at this concept of the American dream, which I know you've talked about when you've read other works of literature. For instance, I know you read of Mice and Men as 9th graders. That's a huge theme in that book by John Steinbeck. And it's something that we'll talk about with this chapter 17 as well. We also will witness some more conflict. All right, so conflict and theme. Holden goes on this date with Sally, and let's just say it doesn't end well. So we will talk about the conflict that we see happening by the end of this chapter 2. So with that, get into your PDF. And again, you can find it in Schoology. You know where they are. Get it pulled up. My apologies. And our PDF. Also, the pages are, synchronous with the pages if you have the packet. So either place, or maybe you have a paperback, right? Maybe you're somebody out there who has your own paperback, and that works just as well too. So here's, again, the PDF. And we are all the way on chapter 17. I believe that's around these pages. Oh no, keep going. All right. Here's chapter 17, Catcher in the Rye. So for me, it's showing on page 66 of my PDF. Chapter 17. I was way early when I got there, so I just sat down on one of those leather couches right near the clock in the lobby and watched the girls. A lot of schools were home for vacation already, and there were about 1,000,000 girls sitting and standing around waiting for their dates to show up. Girls with their legs crossed, girls with their legs not crossed, girls with terrific legs, girls with lousy legs, girls that looked swell, girls that looked like they'd be bitches if you knew them. It was really nice sightseeing, if you know what I mean. In a way, it was sort of depressing too, because you kept wondering what the hell would happen to all of them. When they got out of school and college, I mean, you figured most of them would probably marry dopey guys. Remember the time period. Guys that always talk about how many miles they get to a gallon in their goddamn cars. Guys that get sore and childish as hell if you beat them at golf. Or even just some stupid game like ping pong. Guys that are very mean. Guys that never read. Guys that are very boring, but I have to be careful about that. I mean, about calling certain guys bores. I don't understand boring guys. I really don't. When I was at Elkton Hills, I roomed for about 2 months with this boy, Harris Mackham. He was very intelligent and all, but he was one of the biggest bores I ever met. He had one of these very raspy voices, and he never stopped talking practically. He never stopped talking, and what was awful was he never said anything you wanted to hear in the first place. But he could do one thing. The son of a bitch could whistle better than anybody I ever heard. He'd be making his bed or hanging up stuff in the closet. He was always hanging up stuff in the closet. It drove me crazy. Then he'd be whistling while he did it. If he wasn't talking in raspy voice, he could even whistle classical stuff. But most of the time, he just whistled jazz. He could take something very jazzy like Tin Roof Blues and whistle it so nice and easy right while he was hanging stuff up in the closet that it could kill you. Naturally, I never told him I thought he was a terrific whistler. I mean, you don't just go up to somebody and say, "You're a terrific whistler." But I roomed with him for about 2 whole months, even though he bored me till I was half crazy. Just because he was a terrific whistler, the best I'd ever heard. So I don't know about bores, but maybe you should feel sorry too if you see some swell girl getting married to them. They don't hurt anybody, most of them, and maybe they're secretly all terrific whistlers or something. Who the hell knows? Not me. Finally, old Sally started coming up the stairs, and I started down to meet her. She looked terrific. She really did. She had on this black coat and sort of a black beret. She hardly ever wore a hat, but the beret looked nice. The funny part is, I felt like marrying her the minute I saw her. I'm crazy. I didn't even like her much, and yet all of a sudden I felt like I was in love with her and wanted to marry her. Swear to God, I'm crazy. I admit it. "Holden," she said, "it's marvelous to see you. It's been ages." She had one of those very loud, embarrassing voices when you met her somewhere. She got away with it because she was so damn good looking, but it always gave me a pain in the ass. "It's well to see you," I said. I meant it too. "How are you anyway?" "Absolutely marvelous. Am I late?" I told her no, but she was around 10 minutes late, as a matter of fact. I didn't give a damn, though. All that crap they have in cartoons in the Saturday Evening Post and all, showing guys on street corners looking sore as hell because their dates are late, that's bunk. If a girl looks swell when she meets you, who gives a damn if she's late? Nobody. "We better hurry," she said. "The show starts at 2:40. We started going down the stairs to where the taxis are. "What are we going to see?" she said. "I don't know. The Lunts. It's all I could get tickets for." "The Lunts? Oh, marvelous." I told you she'd be mad when she heard it was the Lunts. We horsed around a little bit in the cab on the way over to the theater. At first she didn't want to because she had her lipstick on and all, but I was being seductive as hell, and she didn't have an alternative. Twice when the goddamn cab stopped short in traffic, I damn near fell off the seat. Those damn drivers never even look where they're going. I swear they don't. They then, just to show you how crazy I am, when we were coming out of this big clinch, I told her I loved her and all. It was a lie, of course, but the thing is, I meant it when I said it. I'm crazy. I swear to God I am. "Oh, darling, I love you too," she said. Then right in the same damn breath, she said, "Promise me you'll let your hair grow. Crew cuts are getting corny, and your hair's so lovely." Lovely my ass. The show wasn't as bad as some I've seen. It was on the crappy side, though. I was about 500,000 years in the life of this old couple. It starts out when they're young and all, and the girl's parents don't want her to marry the boy, but she marries him anyway. Then they keep getting older and older, and the husband goes to war. The wife has this brother that's a drunkard. I couldn't get very interested. I mean, I didn't care too much when anybody in the family died or anything. They were all just a bunch of actors. The husband and wife were a pretty nice old couple, very witty and all, but I couldn't get too interested in them. For one thing, they kept drinking tea or something, or some goddamn thing all through the play. Every time you saw them, some butler was shoving some tea in front of them, or the wife was pouring it for somebody. And everybody kept coming in and going out all the time. You got dizzy watching people sit down and stand up. Alfred and Lynn Fontaine were the old couple, and they were very good, but I didn't like them much. They were different, though, I'll say that. They didn't act like people, and they didn't act like actors. It's hard to explain. They acted more like they knew they were celebrities and all. I mean, they were good, but they were too good. When one of them got finished making a speech, the other one said something very fast right after it. It was supposed to be like people really talking and interrupting each other and all. The trouble was, it was too much like people talking and interrupting each other. They acted a little bit the way old Ernie down in the village plays the piano. If you do something too good, then after a while, if you don't watch it, you start showing off. And then you're not as good anymore. But anyway, they were the only ones in the show, the Lunts. I mean, that looked like they had any real brains. I have to admit it. At the end of the first act, we went out with all the other jerks for a cigarette. What a deal that was. You never saw so many phonies in all your life. Everybody smoking their ears off and talking about the play so that everybody could hear and know how sharp they were. Some dopey movie actor was standing near us having a cigarette. I don't know his name, but he always plays the part of a guy in a war movie that gets yellow before it's time to go over the top. He was with some gorgeous blonde, and the two of them were trying to be very blasé and all, like as if he didn't even know people were looking at him. Modest as hell. I get a big bang out of it. Old Sally didn't talk much, except to rave about the lunch, because she was busy rubbering and being charming. Then all of a sudden, she saw some jerk she knew on the other side of the lobby. Some guy in one of those very dark gray flannel suits and one of those checkered vests. Strictly Ivy League. Big deal. He was standing next to the wall, smoking himself to death, excuse me, and looking bored as hell. Old Sally kept saying, I know that boy from somewhere. She always knew somebody, any place he took her, or thought she did. She kept saying that till I got bored as hell, and I said to her, why don't you go on over and give him a big soul kiss if you know him? He'll enjoy it. She got sore when I said that. Finally, though, the jerk noticed her and came over and said hello. You should have seen the way they'd said hello. You'd have thought they hadn't seen each other in 20 years. You'd have thought they'd taken baths in the same bathtub or something when they were little kids. Old butteroos. It was nauseating. The funny part was they probably met each other just once at some phony party. Finally, when they were all done slobbering around, old Sally introduced us. His name was George something. I don't even remember. He went to Andover. Big deal. You should have seen him when old Sally asked him how he liked the play. He was the kind of phony that have to give themselves room when they answer somebody's question. He stepped back and stepped right on the lady's foot behind him. He probably broke every toe in her body. He said the play itself was no masterpiece, but that the Lunts, of course, were absolute angels. Angels, for Christ's sakes. Angels. That killed me. Then he and old Sally started talking about a lot of people they knew. It was the phoniest conversation you ever heard in your life. They both kept thinking of places as fast as they could. Then they'd think of somebody that lived there and mention their name. I was all set to puke when it was time to go sit down. I really was. And then, when the next act was over, they continued their goddamn boring conversation. They kept thinking of more places and more names of people that lived there. The worst part was the jerk had one of those very phony Ivy League voices, one of those very tired, snobby voices. He sounded just like a girl. He didn't hesitate to horn in on my date, the bastard. I even thought for a minute that he was going to get the goddamn cab with us when the show was over, because he walked about 2 blocks with us. But he had to meet a bunch of phonies for cocktails, he said. I could see them all sitting around in some bar with their goddamn checkered vests, criticizing shows and books and women in those tired, snobby voices. They kill me, those guys.
I sort of hated old Sally by the time we got in the cab, after listening to that phony Andover bastard for about 10 hours. I was all set to take her home and all, I really was, but she said, I have a marvelous idea. She was always having a marvelous idea. Listen, she said, what time do you have to be home for dinner? I mean, are you in a terrible hurry or anything? Do you have to be home any special time? Me? No, no special time, I said. Truer word was never spoken, boy. Why? Let's go ice skating at Radio City. That's the kind of idea she always had. Ice skating at Radio City? You mean right now? Just for an hour or so, don't you want to? If you don't want to. I didn't say I didn't want to, I said. Sure, if you want to. Do you mean it? Don't just say it if you don't mean it. I mean, I don't give a darn one way or the other. Not much, she didn't. You can't rent those little darling skating skirts, old Sally said, or you can rent those darling skating skirts, old Sally said. Jeanette Colts did it last week. That's why she was so hot to go. She wanted to see herself in one of those little skirts that just come down over their butt and all. So we went. And after they gave us our skates, they gave Sally this little blue butt twitcher of a dress to wear. She really did look damn good in it, though. I have to admit it. And don't think she didn't know it. She kept walking ahead of me so that I see how cute her little ass looked. It did look pretty cute, too, I have to admit. Funny part was, though, we were the worst skaters on the whole goddamn rink. I mean the worst. And there were some Lulus, too. Old Sally's ankles kept bending in until they were practically on ice. They not only looked stupid as hell, but they probably hurt like hell, too. I know mine did. Mine were killing me. We must have looked gorgeous. And what made it worse, there were at least a couple hundred rubbernecks that didn't have anything better to do than stand around and watch everybody falling all over themselves. Do you want to get a table inside and have a drink or something? I said to her finally. That's the most marvelous idea you've had all day, she said. She was killing herself. It was brutal. I really felt sorry for her. We took off our goddamn skates and went inside the bar where you can get drinks and watch the skaters in just your stocking feet. As soon as we sat down, old Sally took off her gloves and I gave her a cigarette. She wasn't looking too happy. The waiter came up and ordered a Coke for her. She didn't drink, and a scotch and soda for myself, but the son of a bitch wouldn't bring me one, so I had a Coke too. Then I sort of started lighting matches. I do that quite a lot when I'm in a certain mood. I sort of let them burn down till I can't hold them anymore, and then I drop them in the ashtray. It's a nervous habit. Then all of a sudden, out of a clear blue sky, old Sally said, Look, I have to know, are you or aren't you coming over to help me trim the tree Christmas Eve? I have to know. She was still being snotty on account of her ankles when she was skating. I wrote you I would. You've asked me that about 20 times. Sure I am. I mean, I have to know, she said. She started looking all around the goddamn room. All of a sudden, I quit lighting matches and sort of leaned nearer to her over the table. I had quite a few topics on mind. Hey, Sally, I said. What? She said. She was looking at some other girl on the other side of the room. Did you ever get fed up? I said. I mean, do you ever get scared that everything was going to go lousy unless you did something? I mean, do you like school and all that stuff? It's a terrific bore. I mean, do you hate it? I know it's a terrific bore, but do you hate it is what I mean. Well, I don't exactly hate it. You always have to, well, I hate it. Boy, do I hate it, I said. But it isn't just that. It's everything. I hate living in New York and all, taxi cabs and Madison Avenue buses, with the drivers and all, always yelling at you to get out of the rear door and being introduced to phony guys that call the Luntz angels and going up and down in elevators when you just want to go outside and guys fitting your pants all the time at Brooks and people always, don't shout, please, old Sally said, which was very funny because I wasn't even shouting. Take cars, I said. I said it in this very quiet voice. Take most people, they're crazy about cars. They worry if they get a little scratch on them, and they're always talking about how many miles they get to a gallon. And if they get a brand new car already, they start thinking about trading it in for one that's even newer. I don't even like old cars. I mean, they don't even interest me. I'd rather have a goddamn horse. A horse is at least human, for God's sake. A horse you can at least... I don't know what you're even talking about, old Sally said. You jump from one... You know something, I said. You're probably the only reason I'm in New York right now. Or anywhere. If you weren't around, I'd probably be someplace way the hell off in the woods or some goddamn place. You're the only reason I'm around practically. You're sweet, she said, but you could tell she wanted me to change the damn subject. You ought to go to boys' school sometime. Try it sometime. I said, it's full of phonies. And all you do is study so that you can learn enough to be smart enough to be able to buy a goddamn Cadillac someday. And you have to keep making believe you give a damn if the football team loses. And all you do is talk about girls and liquor and sex and all day. And everybody sticks together in these dirty little goddamn cliques. The guys that are on the basketball team stick together. The Catholics stick together. The goddamn intellectuals stick together. The guys that play bridge stick together. Even the guys that belong to the goddamn Book of a Month club stick together. If you try to have a little intelligent, now listen, old Sally said. Lots of boys get more out of school than that. I agree. I agree they do. Some of them. But that's all I get out of it. See, that's my point. That's exactly my goddamn point, I said. I don't get hardly anything out of anything. I'm in bad shape. I'm in lousy shape. You certainly are. Then all of a sudden, I got this idea. Look, I said, here's my idea. How would you like to get the hell out of here? Here's my idea. I know this guy down in Greenwich Village that we can borrow his car for a couple of weeks. He used to go to the same school I did, and he still owes me $10. What we could do is tomorrow morning we could drive up to Massachusetts and Vermont and all around there. See, it's beautiful as hell up there. It really is. I was getting excited as hell the more I thought of it. I sort of reached over and took old Sally's goddamn hand. What a goddamn fool I was. No kidding, I said. I have about $180 in the bank. I can take it out when it opens in the morning, and then I could go down and get this guy's car. No kidding. We'll stay in these cabin camps and stuff like that till the dough runs out. Then, when the dough runs out, I could get a job somewhere, and we could live somewhere with a brook and all. And later on, we could get married or something. I could chop all the wood, all of our own wood in the wintertime, and all. Honest to God, we could have a terrific time. What do you say? Come on, what do you say? Will you do it with me, please? You can't just do something like that, old Sally said. She sounded sore as hell. Why not? Why the hell not? Stop screaming at me, please, she said, which was crap because I wasn't even screaming at her. Why can't you? Why not? Because you can't, that's all. In the first place, we're both practically children. And did you ever stop to think that you'd do what you'd do if you didn't get a job when your money ran out? We'd starve to death. The whole thing's so fantastic. It isn't fantastic. I'd get a job. Don't worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. What's the matter? Don't you want to go with me? Say so if you don't. It isn't that. It isn't that at all, old Sally said. I was beginning to hate her in a way. We'll have oodles of time to do those things, all those things. I mean, after you go to college and all. And if we should get married and all, there'll be oodles of marvelous places to go. No, there wouldn't be. There wouldn't be oodles of places to go at all. It'd be entirely different. I said. I was getting depressed as hell again. What? She said. I can't hear you. 1 minute you are screaming and the next you are. I said, no, there wouldn't be marvelous places to go after I went to college and all. Open your ears. It'd be entirely different. We'd have to go downstairs in elevators with suitcases and stuff. We'd have to phone up everybody and tell them goodbye and send them postcards from hotels and all. We'd be working in some office, making a lot of dough and riding to work in cabs and Madison Avenue buses, reading newspapers and playing bridge and all, going to the movies and seeing a lot of stupid shorts and coming attractions and newsreels, Christ almighty. There's always a dumb horse race and some dame breaking a bottle over a ship, some chimpanzee riding a goddamn bicycle with pants on. It wouldn't be the same at all. You don't see what I mean at all. Maybe I don't. Maybe you don't either, old Sally said. We both hated each other's guts by that time. You could see there wasn't any sense trying to have an intelligent conversation. I was sorry as hell I started it. Come on, let's get out of here, I said. You give me a royal pain in the ass if you want to know the truth. Boy, did she hit the ceiling when I said that. I know I shouldn't have said it, and I probably wouldn't have ordinarily, but she was depressing the hell out of me. Usually, I never say crude things like that to a girl. Boy, did she hit the ceiling. I apologized like a madman. She wouldn't accept my apology. She was even crying, which scared me a little bit because I was a little afraid she'd go home and tell her father I called her a pain in the ass. Father was one of those big silent bastards. He wasn't too crazy about me anyhow. He once told old Sally I was too goddamn noisy. No kidding. I'm sorry, I kept telling her. You're sorry? You're sorry? That's very funny, she said. She was still sort of crying, and all of a sudden, I did feel sort of sorry I said it. of those very loud, stupid laughs. I mean, if I ever sat behind myself in a movie or something, I'd probably lean over and tell myself to please shut up. It made old Sally madder than ever. I stuck around for a while, apologizing and trying to get her to excuse me, but she wouldn't. She kept telling me to go away and leave her alone. So finally, I did. I went inside and got my shoes and stuff and left without her. I shouldn't have, but I was pretty goddamn fed up by that time. If you want to know the truth, I don't even know why I started all that stuff with her. I mean, about going away somewhere to Massachusetts and Vermont and all. I probably wouldn't have taken her even if she wanted to go with me. She wouldn't have been anybody to go with. The terrible part, though, is that I meant it when I asked her. That's the terrible part. I swear to God, I'm a madman. Okay.
Oh, Holden. That date did not go well. You don't tell your date they're a pain in the ass. Sally did the right thing, I think. She made Holden go away because Holden is no one to be on a date with right now. Holden needs to take care of himself first before he tries to. I know he's lonely, but I think that, he could hang out with a friend, somebody who could possibly like lend an ear and help him out if you can find that person. But in terms of going on a date with somebody, could you imagine taking Holden seriously right now? He has got a lot going on, and he is not in the greatest of spaces to be going out on dates with people like Sally Hayes, who Sally's just home for the holidays, right? She's not looking for any big dramatic, emotional event with Holden. And that is what Holden has to offer. It has a lot of emotions going on, and he is not what we call regulated. So he, you can see that he has this. I'm going to do a screen share again so we can look at the passage. He has a couple of moments there after they go out. So at first they're out at the movie and things aren't going too terribly, but when they leave the movie and they go ice skating, this is kind of where things go downhill for Holden and Sally. So this is on page 70. He starts talking about people that are in his life. And he mentions this kid at the school and people being terrific bores and, living this lifestyle, this conformity lifestyle that is being pushed in Holden's direction from the society that he lives in. So this is kind of like, Holden like rebelling against what his society, his parents and people that he knows encourage from kids his age to follow, to get on this certain path. And he says, oh my, I hate it. He says, it's so boring. He says, gosh, these Madison Avenue buses, right? And he starts talking about how everybody gets all mad. People stick together, form these cliques, and then in the cliques, and it just drives him crazy. And then he asks Sally, he's like, I just want to get out of here. So this is this whole idea of escaping. So Holden is looking for some sort of strategy to help himself out. And he has this whole concept that he doesn't want to conform. He really is not interested in getting on this path that is being pushed at him. And he's failing out of school again. And the people on the path that he's being pushed into, he despises. He thinks they're all phony and he just doesn't see himself there. So his alternative is let's escape. All right. So remember, we're in like survival mode. Are you going to fight? Are you going to freeze? Or are you going to take flight? And who does Holden admire? I'm just on my screen share for a second. You in the eye. It's more of a what does Holden admire? What animals is he obsessed with? Think about it. The ducks. The ducks on the pond in Central Park, because they can escape. They have the opportunity to fly away. They can be free. And he really wonders about them. And he has such a curiosity about them. And so this passage is Holden, wanting to escape. He wants to fly away, right? he's like, we'll borrow this car. We'll go up to Massachusetts and Vermont. We'll kind of get a little place in the woods, a camp. I'll cut the wood myself and get a job. And this is what Salinger himself, the author, did. He escaped New Hampshire. He couldn't handle the fame. He was not interested in pursuing this life of fame. And for most of his life, after the popularity of Catcher in the Rye, he escaped to this little town in New Hampshire, and he lived there. He lived to be like about 90, and he had this small, place to himself in this small town in New Hampshire. And this is what Holden's talking about doing. All right. He's talking about escaping, and he wants Sally to come with him. And she is like, are you crazy? What is the matter with you? And she's like, what? And Holden's like, oh, it's not fantastic. Like, we could really make this happen. And Sally's like, oh, no. And then Holden starts like trying to sell her with like, some ideas about conforming. Oh, we could get married at some point in time, and like the going to school stuff. Sally here talks about this is what you have to do. Like, this is the path that they're being pushed on, to go to college, to get married, that whole traditional lifestyle path. And Holden's trying to run away from it, but at the same time, he's recognizing that it's hard to escape it. And he's asking Sally to come with him, and he's like, oh, we could kind of like have some hybrid, I guess would be the best word, hybrid experience of getting away from this path that's being pushed at us, and still having some of these like traditional conforming ideas that we would embrace. And so here he keeps going on, and Sally is like, what is your deal, man? First you're screaming, then you're whispering. So if you analyze Holden, he's like deeply conflicted internally. And this is existential crisis stuff right here. And then he actually ends up like getting beyond his internal crisis and has a little conflict externally with Sally. And he calls her, he verbally, says some harmful things to Sally. He calls her a pain in the ass, and that, ends their date, which I think it was probably a good thing that their date ended there. So with that, conflict, Holden's internal, external conflicts, he's in crisis mode. Existential crisis, crisis of existence. He wants to escape that theme of like conforming versus rebelling, and how to maybe like merge the two when he has this conversation with Sally. But he really like ends up just having a conflict, not just with himself, which is where it starts, but now with Sally. So he has to get through his own conflict, right? He needs to manage himself before he can then have success with someone else in his life. And we see this happen. And it doesn't matter if it was Sally Hayes or Jane Gallagher or whoever it is. If he went out with somebody, this is where Holden is in his life. He's not in a place where he feels well enough to be able to get along in a healthy way with another person. He can't even make it through this date, this nice date. They went out to a show and they went ice skating, and this, he can't even manage a couple hours with Sally Hayes. So this shows us a lot about his character. And she's not trying to provoke him. It's Holden who keeps bringing these topics up to her. So that's just some food for thought of like where Holden is and what kind of work he needs to do for himself in order to then, maybe be able to have a successful day with somebody else. All right. And poor Sally kind of gets the brunt of this by the end of the chapter. So we'll talk again, look at Schoology for updates, and we'll move on to chapter 18 in the next video. All right. Bye.